Your story, your brand, and managing personal brand management is our episode topic. My guest is Fred Neis, a registered nurse and the founder and managing partner at AdvisorRN. So let's get started.
Welcome to the BRG Nurse Executive Podcast. BRG is a global consulting firm that helps organizations in disputes and investigations, corporate finance, and performance improvement and advisory. BRG's healthcare performance improvement practice offers multidisciplinary services to healthcare organizations. We focus on implementation with innovative, independent, and data-driven solutions. In the BRG Nurse Executive Podcast, we discuss improving patient care by advancing nursing leadership. For more information about BRG, please visit thinkbrg.com. Now here's your host, Nick Chmielewski.
Fred, thank you so much for joining us today.
Nick, thanks so much for having me, and it's good to see you.
Likewise, before we get into our episode topic, would you share a little bit about yourself with our listeners?
I'm a nurse and firefighter, paramedic, about 30 years of clinical and business experience in healthcare. I'm a fellow with the American College of Healthcare Executives, as well as with the Academy of Emergency Nursing. And I've been an executive within consulting and tech companies, and as well with a value-based care company. And it was really with the value-based care company that I oversaw the operational components of sales and marketing. And that's where I became much more passionate around, I think, the topic we're going to dive into today, which is around your story, your brand as an executive and as a leader. And that was a tipping point for me.
Now, how did you come to focus in on this area of opportunity around essentially personal brand management, right?
It's personal brand management. And I think about the three personas that most of us live in, and the fact that, especially post-pandemic, and I would say even before then to a degree, and we maybe just weren't as attentive to it, or I wasn't at least quite as attentive to it, is there's Nick, you the person, you the family man, the husband. Then there is Nick, the professional, the leader, the known national individual with emergency nursing and with leadership. And then there is Nick with BRG. And so how do you bring those three personas of Nick together in whatever balance you decided? And for me, it came to an area of focus of opportunity. As I was leaving the advisory board company a few years ago, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And I was getting asked the question fairly routinely from friends and colleagues and mentors, what do you want to do? And Nick, just like any other good emergency nurse, what would I say? I could do a lot of things. And I came to realize that really wasn't the right answer to the question, because it wasn't helpful to any of the folks who were asking me that question, because they didn't know how to help me or how to look or what I potentially represented or the types of things that I would be passionate about or talented to do. And so that's really, as I started to formulate the who am I, and then really started to refine it just a couple of years ago, as I was working with that value-based care company and started to understand the power of brands and start to and really work through kind of the sales and marketing components. And what does brand mean? Companies spend billions of dollars a year managing their brand, and that's a center of gravity for the products and services that they sell and the personal and emotional attachment that we might have to a particular brand. Just in that same way, how are we as people representing ourselves? And we're the best ambassadors for our own brands.
So what does this mean for like a nurse leader or a nurse executive? Because like you think about a nurse leader or a nurse executive, it's more of like, how does that person fit into maybe the brand of the company, or is it more of what is the need? What would my takeaway here from a nurse leader be other than I project great leadership?
With the advent of the digital age and with the opportunities that we have in front of us, nurse leaders, it's now becoming a true leadership competency to have to manage your brand. And I see that in the space of as an individual leader, not so much And as a representative of the organizations that you work with and work for, the organizations have their own marketing teams. They have their own apparatus that manages brand. This is about the individual and what they want to do and what they want to be seen as. And I think as Versus, we've enjoyed that like quarter of a century of the most trusted profession in the United States, barring 2001. We gave that up to the firefighters. And I think we just need to do a much better job as nurse leaders, taking that and accepting that privilege for our brands and managing it, not just when we need it most, when maybe we're looking for our next opportunity, managing it on a regular basis and refining it constantly to represent who we are, whether we are a leader as defined by our title, or we are a leader or a nurse within education, research, the clinical space, advocacy, in corporate space. And this would be one of the things I would also say just broadly about nurses. Many of us repeat the statistic that there's 40% of nurses today will be leaving the profession, in air quotes, leaving the profession in 5 years. I'll take the position or suggest that the notion really is they're not leaving the profession. They're leaving the profession as maybe we defined it 30, 40, 50 years ago. Nurses just have so much more of an opportunity, and nurse executives now have so much more of an opportunity that we're finding alternatives to the way that we want to be a nurse and the way we want to create healthy communities and the way we want to take care of people.
What are you finding as common themes that nurses need to tackle as we start to craft our story and then harden it within the brand that we're projecting to the public?
Yeah, I'm doing this in a number of different ways with nurse executives right now, and as well other executives in the country, principally in the healthcare space. I think for nurse executives particularly, they've not had the chance probably, or really necessarily had the opportunity to think about the power of their own brand and the way that what they do on a day-to-day basis can really help change the broader contours or shaping of the way healthcare is delivered. That's a lot of lofty words. And what it really tactically means is, how does that nurse executive decide who they are as a leader? Am I the nurse executive for a large health system or 280 bed facility? Or do I want to be known as someone who is leading the way for the next generation of nurse leaders? Or do I want to be known as an advocate for change? Or do I want to be known, and I've got a chief nursing executive right now who is thinking to herself after 25 years of being a very successful chief nurse exec in a large health system, she's not looking to find a new role full time. She's now thinking to herself, what else is out there? What's the art of the possible that I'm not even aware of? And in her case, she's looking for paid board positions. And so how does she fuse together all the things she's done, her experiences, her competencies, her skills, her passion, in a way that makes it compelling to a board that they'd want to bring her into a board position, and that she's mission capable on day one, the day she gets there? Her fiduciary responsibility, the governance, the strategy. Potentially, if she's sitting on a for-profit board or a publicly traded company, does she have the understandings and the abilities around EBITDA and quarterly earnings calls, things that are typically unfamiliar to a chief nurse executive in that space? And then I've got a chief nurse exec who's realizing the power of the brand, leveraging her nurse leaders across her organization to promote that organization as a kind of a destination employer. And so she's trying to work with her nurse leadership as well in some workshops to bring them all together and have them portray their organization and them as the place that you want to work. You want to come work for, this health system. Yes. So just want to come work with these people. They're really fun. They're cool. They're good leaders and they're interesting, and it'll help propel your career.
So do you have any recommendations around what this looks like for, if you're a chief nurse within an organization, to what extent, and let's just use LinkedIn as an example, to what
Sure.
extent are we promoting that brand, that component, that drive of, hey, I want you to come work for me. I want to come work for this environment where I seen this person being active out there. How much of that is that individual promoting it on LinkedIn versus the company itself? And where is the line with that? And are organizations in some ways restrictive at all still, or is it pretty much as long as you're promoting positivity, we're good?
I'll take that question in a couple of different ways. So from an organization perspective, what I'm finding is that the organizations who recognize the power of the individuals using their own personal and leadership brands out in the public, they're doing a much better job of being able to recruit and retain nurses who want to work for them and be high performers. Inside that, though, you've got to have the policies and the practice structures available to allow the nurse leaders to host, to be participatory in outside professional organizations and committees. So I've got an example where I've got a social media policy, and it's almost a grocery list of, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this. I've taken the position that let's reposition this policy to, these are the things we'd like you to do. These are the types of things you should do. Yeah, absolutely. Don't show information about the people that you're caring for. That's a non-starter. However, is there an opportunity to bring a couple of colleagues together in a group photo and illustrate that as a positive example of, look at the cool work we're doing today, or we hit 1,000 successful procedures or something like that, and allow the nurse leaders to be the ones to be your brand managers as an organization rather than the organization. I think to another part of your question, you said it was LinkedIn, so I'll go with that one for a moment. I think that's a good platform to talk about from a digital perspective. I was at a conference recently and they had a booth and it was flooded with nurse leaders. It was more than standing room only. There was a line down the corridor or the aisle waiting to have conversations with folks. And what I would say was I've stood there for 25, 30 minutes. I would say about 40% of the nurse leaders who were approaching that booth didn't have what appeared to be a digital presence other than on their personal Instagrams or their X platforms or their Facebook. And they were starting to get interested in, what does this look like professionally? If I'm a chief nurse exec, I think it's absolutely an essential component of brand management as a nurse leader to be on some digital platforms, LinkedIn, Instagram, wherever it needs to be from a professional standpoint. I had two different platforms within Instagram. One is personal and it's private. It shows my kids and me and my family and my friends and the things that I do. And then I have a professional one as well, where I bring and infuse more of the professional elements of the brand that I want to be in the brand straight.
So at what level should a nurse leader really start thinking about this image perspective? Because clearly we've identified that the chief executive or the chief nurse or a senior director in nursing needs to be doing this, probably at a director level as well, but at the manager level, at the assistant manager level, what role should this brand management, particularly on a digital platform, be used or not be used? What are your thoughts on that?
It's becoming a core competency for a nurse at any level. And I would very much encourage students who are in schools of nursing now to have part of their curriculum around managing their brand and setting up their brand. Who do they want to be? And it's going to change over time, right? Like one of the questions that we ask in interviews commonly is, where do you see yourself in 5 years? No one knows anymore. What I can say to that, to answer the question, where do I see myself in 5 years, are these are the things I'm interested in. These are the skills I may want to accumulate and the experiences I want to have. I don't know where that's going to take me. And I think brand management today starts when you're in a training program somewhere. And I think once you become a formal manager by title, it's absolutely incumbent upon you, and with support of the organization and support of the nurse executive, to have a professional brand presence in the industry.
So to that point, to what extent are nursing schools or individual companies right now having this conversation?
To not near enough of a degree,
Yeah.
Nick. If we're being completely honest with each other, I've participated in some early workshops with a couple of schools of nursing. I just don't think that it's embedded enough or hardened enough within the curriculum. And so I would say not near enough. I think for health systems, I think the velocity to adoption is a little bit faster at this point. One of the things I've done in some workshops that's fun, and it's one of the early things, it's always dangerous for a facilitator to do this, is say to the attendees, I'd like you to pick up your phone. And because you can potentially lose them for the rest of the, right? Totally lose them for the rest of the time together. And I ask them to pick a web browser, pick whichever search engine you want and type in your name and hit enter. And that is essentially your brand. And at that point, that's, I think, the moment that individuals as leaders start to recognize the power of that, because you only get one chance at a first impression.
Yeah.
And whether we like it or not, all of us are using the digital platforms at our disposal to see the leaders that we are. So people are checking us out every single day, whether that's your colleagues, the people that work for you, the people you work with, the people you work around, your customers, your consumers, the people you care for. They're all looking you up. Recruiters, professional organizations. And so you've got to be ready every moment, even when you're not the one purposely engaged in that moment, to represent yourself.
And to your point, when you search for yourself on whatever web browser you're using, you're not necessarily looking at the image that you are intending to project, but rather how the web or the environment sees you, what available data is out there. And so if those two things are in conflict with one another, well, we certainly have some work that we need to do to change that image.
That's right. That's exactly right. And I think that's the right call to arms right there.
Absolutely. How did you get started to develop your story and your brand around personal management?
It really did start as I left the advisory board, and then with this value-based care company as well. I had some really good colleagues and mentors who I don't think they were intentional in teaching me the importance of it. They happened to have taught me the importance of it. And so as I got started and I was transitioning off the advisory board and trying to find not just full-time employment, find other things that I wanted to be a part of, I then had to step back and ask myself, not necessarily the first question of what do you want to do? The first question I think is, who am I? And also then secondly, what do I want to be known for in the industry? I think those are two of the very early questions I had to ask and answer of myself to decide then how do I bring the skills, the competencies, the experience all together to try and best represent. And that's on a digital scale. It's also with your bio, your board bio, your resume, your CV, particularly if you're in the education space, bringing all of those together, synthesizing that as a package that then can be delivered out into the world. So that's how I got started, with almost with a little bit of pain involved. It's a good motivator.
Looking back, is there anything that you would have done differently, or maybe to amplify, to take your career or care of your brand differently?
I think there are two things. If I get to rewind the tape, the thing that I say regularly to colleagues and to early careers particularly is building and cultivating a network of colleagues. I'm an introvert, and so this is really difficult for someone like me to do generally. I should have been much more deliberate in just reaching out to people, getting introduced, hearing their story, having them hear my story, and being acquainted. And then being very purposeful, periodically just reaching out and asking for a coffee, or being very purposeful and saying, hey, I remember something about, I think you're going to have surgery in a couple of days, just wishing you well. A quick text or a quick email to continue to cultivate that network. So I think network is number one. The other thing I would do differently, partially due to the number of years I've been in the industry, the internet didn't necessarily exist fully when I started. I think for early careers particularly, it starts the day you at least start in your formal training programs and your schools of nursing. You've got to start to understand the power of your brand digitally and can be a constant cultivator of what is out there and curator of what is out there and what do you want out there about. I think the fact that you host this podcast is a testament to where you want your brand to be. So how do you manage your brand and how do you think about Nick as a brand ambassador for himself?
Yeah, I hope that, and I've not Googled myself, so I think that's an opportunity for me to do it or take away as an option here after this podcast. But I want to be seen, our team, the ED Performance Improvement Team within BRG, I think we need to be seen as the premier company that operates in the space of improving emergency department operations and emergency care delivery across the United States and hopefully in the future globally. And as the leader of that team, I hope that my brand aligns with that as well, that when people need to fix an operational problem in an ED, I'm the guy that they call. I'm the person who's going to call Nick Chmielewski. And how we accomplish that, for me, what's my methodology is forming teams, bringing multidisciplinary people to the table and using analytics to really drive the conversation around what's working and what's not working, and how does the data align with what people are thinking and what people are feeling. Because if you're not using data to serve as a foundation, then you're not going to be coming up with the right solution.
I think that's great. One of the things I want to pick out of what you said, which is so vitally important for many folks in the career, you just want to be the first phone call.
Oh yeah.
Right? You want to be thought of within your brand that you should be the first phone call when someone has an issue and they think to themselves, I don't know if I can solve this myself. And maybe even if I can, I'd really like an outside voice to give me that. And that's why I do what I do as well, is I want to be known as the first phone call.
Yeah. Look, we were working with an academic medical center that had a walkout rate of nearly 8%. And within the first cycle of us finishing our work, they're now a Lantern Award recipient. And as the time of us recording this podcast, we're actually working on publishing that in a journal. We put out some case studies, but yeah, replicating that and being recognized as who are you going to call? I'm going to call the BRG ED team. So
exactly.
Any closing thoughts as we wrap up our episode?
The call to action for nurses and nurse executives who are listening to your podcast is, one, go see what people see about you on a daily basis by you typing in your name into a search engine and hitting enter. And that's your current brand. And that's what people think and know about you today. Number two, change the calculus. As a nurse executive, it is now a clear competency as a leader to manage your story and your brand. And third, think about how to work with your leadership team and level them up as well to be great brand ambassadors for themselves. So it's leadership development, part of your retention strategy, as well as they can be brand ambassadors for your organization.
Your story, your brand, essentially talking about personal brand management has been our episode topic. Fred Neis, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, thanks again, Nick, for having me. I really appreciate it.
You've been listening to the BRG Nurse Executive Podcast, which focuses on improving patient care by advancing nursing leadership. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the host and podcast guest and do not necessarily reflect the opinions, position, or policy of the guest employer, Berkeley Research Group, or their other respective employees and affiliates.